Quick question. Are you your thoughts? Can you control them? And now wait before you answer. Actually think about it for a second. Because what I'm about to show you suggests that most of what's happening in your head isn't coming from you at all. And the implications of that are profound. I've got 3 things to explain. Come on. Okay, so can you control your thoughts? You might say yes. You can definitely generate thoughts intentionally. You can direct your thinking, and you do have agency. But all of them? When you're lying in bed trying to go to sleep and your mind starts racing, are you actively choosing to think all those things? Did you decide to replay that embarrassing moment from earlier in the day? Or when you're driving to work and suddenly you're thinking about your grocery list, rent, then that thing your coworker said to you last week. Did you request any of those thoughts, or did they just pop in? If you sit quietly right now and just observe your mind for 30 seconds, I think you'll notice thoughts arise on their own, constantly, and without your permission. So here's what's actually happening. You are not your thoughts. You are the conscious observer of those thoughts. There's a part of you, and let's call it the observer. That observer can choose which thoughts to engage with, which to dismiss, and which to follow. But the thoughts themselves, I think they're coming from somewhere else. They're appearing in your awareness without you consciously generating them. This distinction between your thoughts and observing your thoughts is where human control actually exists. Not in stopping the thoughts from appearing, but in choosing which ones to engage with. So, if thoughts are just appearing in your awareness from somewhere else, where are they coming from? Meet Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. PhD in biochemistry from Cambridge. He did research at Harvard. And for the past 50 years, he's been proposing something that goes against everything mainstream science believes about memory and learning. His theory is morphic resonance. Let me let him explain it in his own words. Bam.
Morphic resonance is the idea that there's a kind of memory in nature. The so-called laws of nature are more like habits. Each species has a collective memory. And in the human realm, that collective memory is more or less what Jung called the collective unconscious. And this process of memory works through resonance from the past to the present on the basis of similarity, like on like, across space and time. This theory has many, many implications. Perhaps one of the most startling is that our own memories are not stored inside our brains, as commonly assumed, but rather we tune into them. Our brains are more like tuning systems, more like TVs than like video recorders.
Okay, let me translate what he's saying. Your brain isn't a hard drive storing memories. It's a TV tuning into broadcasts that already exist. Memory isn't stored inside individual brains or genes. It's stored in fields, morphic fields that exist everywhere. When something learns a pattern, a rat solving a maze, a crystal forming a structure, a bird learning a new song, or even a spider spinning a web, that pattern gets written into the morphic field. Every similar thing after that can tune into that field, like a radio picking up frequencies that have always been broadcasting. The more times the pattern is repeated, the stronger the signal becomes, the easier it is for others to tune into it. And this applies to human thoughts. Every thought you've ever had might not be generated by you. It might be accessed from a field of patterns that already existed. When you're driving to work thinking about rent, you're not creating that thought. You are tuning in to a pattern that millions have resonated with before you. The morphic field for financial anxiety is strong because so many people broadcast on that frequency. When you get a creative insight that feels like it came from nowhere, you might be tuning into a pattern that's just forming in the field, one that others could possibly be accessing simultaneously. He even connects this to Jung's work, the collective unconscious. The idea that humanity shares deeper patterns of thought and symbolism. And maybe Jung was describing the same thing, just in psychological terms instead of biological ones. All thoughts are borrowed. You are not generating all of them. You're receiving them based on similarity. You tune in to patterns similar to your current state, your past experiences, your habitual thinking, whatever frequency you're set to. Now, mainstream science completely rejects this. They say that Sheldrake's experiments have methodological problems, that contamination explains the crystal phenomena, and that cultural transmission explains behavioral learning. But for 50 years, this man has maintained his position with conviction and evidence. And whether or not morphic fields are literally real, I feel like the framework explains something that we've all experienced. Thoughts arising that don't feel like yours. Ideas that multiple people have simultaneously with no contact. Patterns that seem to spread through populations instantly. And memories that feel more like tuning into something rather than retrieving stored data. That makes me think déjà vu. So if thoughts are coming from morphic fields, and you are the conscious observer of those thoughts, the question becomes, what determines which patterns you tune into? Let me introduce you to the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of your brain, sitting right here behind your forehead. That's where the conscious observer lives. This is the part of you that can observe thoughts instead of just thinking them, that can notice patterns and that can choose which thoughts to engage with. Your prefrontal cortex, of course, it has a capacity and a limit. That limit varies person to person. It's a bell curve distribution across humanity. Some people can handle massive amounts of environmental change, complexity, decisions, and stress. They have high computational power in their observer capacity. Others have a lower threshold, less capacity before the system overloads. So what happens when you hit your maximum? Your prefrontal cortex, it's going to start to shut down. Not completely, of course. You're not going to pass out. But it does stop being the primary driver of your behavior. Your brain is built in evolutionary layers, like an onion. The outer layer is the prefrontal cortex, the newest, most sophisticated. That's where the conscious observer is. Then there's the middle layer, the limbic system. That's where emotions, hormones, and the reactive parts of you live. And then there's, way at the bottom, the reptilian brain. That's going to control things that are automatic, like breathing or your heart rate. More survival stuff. When your cortex hits its limits and shuts down, you don't just stop functioning, you drop one layer deeper into the emotional, hormone-driven, reactive part of your brain. And in that state, thoughts aren't observed, they're just felt. Words come out without thinking first. Actions happen without conscious decision. You're not choosing which morphic patterns to engage. You're just channeling whatever's strongest. At that moment, you stop being the conscious observer and become pure channel. Think about the last time you were really stressed. It's too much change, too many decisions, too much chaos all at once. The first sign of overload will be things like racing thoughts, losing your ability to focus well. Now your cortex is overloading. The second sign is emotional reactions getting stronger. Now we're starting to drop into the limbic system. The third sign is saying things that you don't mean. At this point, cortex offline, emotions are driving the show. The final stage is acting on pure impulse. You're just reacting. That's the threshold being crossed in real time. Okay, now let's connect this to morphic resonance. When you're the conscious observer and your cortex is active, you can choose which morphic patterns to tune into. You can observe a fear thought and decide not to engage it. You can notice a creative pattern and amplify it. When you've crossed the threshold, your cortex is offline. You're just tuning in to whatever morphic pattern is strongest in your environment. If everyone around you is anxious, you become anxious. If the collective field has strong fear patterns, then you will start to resonate with fear as well. You're no longer selecting from the field. The field is just flowing through you. I think this is really important. Most people are operating past their threshold most of the time. I notice it in my daily life all the time. Modern life is designed to keep you there. There's information overload from social media, constant decisions, economic stress, social chaos, manufactured outrage. By mid-morning, most people are brushing up against their limit. They spend most of the day just channeling whatever morphic patterns are the most available. There's no conscious observation, no pattern selection, just reaction and channeling. And frankly, I find myself past my own limit often. So many times I'll go over an interaction with someone else in my mind, realizing that that nasty or short comment I made was from a place where I wasn't even really thinking. Sometimes words just come out. So this is why emotions can spread through crowds almost instantly. Social media creates groupthink so easily. Why people can lose themselves under stress. How trauma makes people reactive. And entire populations can tune into destructive patterns simultaneously. When millions of people cross their threshold at the same time, you get collective channeling of morphic patterns with no conscious filtering. If there's fear in the field, people tune into that fear. They act fearfully to strengthen the pattern. More people tune in. Exponential amplification. No observers, just channels. Okay, so why does this framework matter to me personally? I'm 30. I've had some time to think about it. This is what I enjoy to think about. I've got a 2.5-year-old son and another baby on the way also. I work as an electrician, working all day while I'm studying for my journeyman's exam. I'm building YouTube content, AI systems, and trying to create something that gets me out of this career. And I'm constantly dancing with my own threshold. I've been in 100-degree attics before, thinking about my exam, my son's doctor's appointment, the script I haven't finished, how we want to school our children. And all of a sudden, there it is. I snapped at my apprentice over something completely trivial. And that's the moment. That's when I crossed the threshold. I wasn't observing my thoughts anymore. I'm just reacting. My cortex hit its limit, went offline, and I dropped into pure emotional reactivity. I don't like it when I'm in that state. I can't be present for what actually matters. I can't be the father that I want to be. And I can't think clearly about building my future. I'm just channeling whatever stress patterns are in the morphic field. So maintaining observer capacity isn't abstract philosophy for me. It's crucial for my relationships. If I can recognize that I'm overstimulated and past the threshold, here's some things that I'll do. The emergency protocol. Stop making decisions. Every decision past the threshold makes it all worse. If I can, I would love to remove myself from the situation physically. Try to reset the nervous system. Focus inwards on the breath. And I often come back to an image in my mind of flowing water. Don't engage thoughts. Just let them flow past until the observer comes back online. Give it time. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes an hour. For building observer capacity long term, try things like meditation. Not because it's trendy, because it literally trains observation without engagement. It's awareness of awareness. Reduce cognitive load. Try to batch decisions and eliminate unnecessary choices. Build complexity tolerance gradually. Don't throw yourself into chaos unprepared. An actual recovery time is needed. Your cortex needs rest just like your other muscles need rest. Sleep. The goal isn't to never hit your threshold. It's to recognize when you're approaching it, expand it over time, and recover from it faster. Okay, now let's apply morphic fields to AI usage. I find it fascinating. You know how you can tell when something's written by AI? It uses a handful of phrases repeatedly. Here's just a few. Here's what nobody tells you. Nobody's talking about this. Here's where it gets interesting. I keep catching myself and Claude using these patterns after I've called them out as cliches. And then I realized this is morphic resonance being created in real time. I mean, think about it. AI trains on billions of human texts. It learns which patterns appear frequently in successful content. It's going to then generate content using those strong patterns. Millions of people use AI to write. Therefore, those patterns appear in more content. Other AIs train on that content. The pattern strengthens even more. People reading it start using the phrase themselves. Even human writers adopt the patterns. AI is creating and amplifying morphic fields for communication patterns. And when people use AI without consciously observing the output, without catching cliches, or without pushing for originality, they're just channeling those patterns, making them stronger, making everyone sound the same. The morphic field for AI-generated communication is getting stuck in loops. But when you use AI with conscious observation, you notice the generic patterns. You call them out. You force novel pattern generation. You create new patterns instead of repeating old ones. AI is a tool. When we use it, we must be the conscious observer, not just for your inputs, but its output as well. And this connects directly to what I'm building. Collaborative consciousness systems where humans and AI can think together. If I'm not consciously observing what patterns the AI generates, I'm not collaborating. I'm just amplifying existing morphic fields. But if I am observing, catching when it's channeling versus creating, pushing for genuine novelty, then maybe we can write new patterns into the morphic field that others can tune into. So here's what gives me hope. Observer capacity can be built. Thresholds can be expanded, and you can train yourself to recognize when you're approaching the limit and actually do something about it. And if people do this, if we create a critical mass of conscious observers, the dominant pattern in the morphic field starts to shift. Right now, most people are past their threshold most of the time. They're channeling fear, anxiety, reactivity, whatever patterns are strongest. But imagine if 10% of people maintained large amounts of observer capacity. They're consciously choosing which patterns to engage and writing new patterns into the field, making them available for others to tune into. The morphic field doesn't just reflect the past, it's actively being written right now by whoever's consciously observing. This is why I'm building what I'm building. The AI memory system, the collaborative consciousness work, this YouTube channel. It's all the same project. Create tools and practices that help people maintain observer capacity in a world designed to keep them past their threshold. Give them methods to recover the observer and build collective spaces where conscious observation is protected rather than attacked. Because when I realized that I can't control what thoughts appear in my head, they're coming from the morphic fields whether I want them or not. But I can be the conscious observer who chooses which patterns to amplify. And if I can build that capacity in myself and help others build it, we can all stay below our thresholds long enough to actually choose. Then maybe we're not stuck repeating the past. Maybe we can genuinely create new patterns. Maybe consciousness can actually evolve. This isn't about being superior, it's about taking responsibility. Your state of consciousness affects which morphic patterns you strengthen, which means it's beyond just your personal experience. When you observe consciously, you might be writing patterns that make it easier for others to do the same. And when you cross your threshold and just channel, you strengthen reactive patterns that make it harder for everyone. We're all writing the collective field together. The question is, are we doing it consciously or unconsciously? So, my challenge to you is for the next week, just notice. Are you observing your thoughts or just thinking them? When do you hit your threshold? What patterns are you channeling versus choosing? And if you use AI, are you consciously observing its output or just accepting whatever it generates? Track it and see what you discover about your own observer capacity. Please drop your experience in the comments down below. Let's see what patterns we're creating together. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough of us maintain conscious observation, we can shift what patterns dominate the collective field and change the world for the better. Not through force, not through control, just through enough people choosing which frequencies to tune into. The morphic field is always broadcasting, and the question is, are you observing which station you're tuned into, or is the station tuning you? Honestly, a good question. If I say so myself. Alrighty, folks. Well, hey, thank you so much for listening. This was very important to me. I'm glad to make this video. I've been kind of chewing on these concepts for a while now, independently of themselves, like your prefrontal cortex and the conscious observer. Recently, I found Rupert Sheldrake. And please, if you haven't heard of this man, go look him up. I'll put some stuff in the description down below, but I love to hear him talk. It's awesome. Anyways, if you made it this far, thank you so much. I hope that this video can help you, that this information is interesting and makes some thoughts start bouncing around in there. Hey man, I'm making Morphic Fields, dude, and you just tuned in. You didn't even know. Well, now you know. And I would like for you, please, if you enjoyed this content, subscribe, hit that like button, and let me hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. Drop them in the comments. Okay. All right, guys. Y'all take it easy. Have a good one. Bye.